Welcome to highly anticipated, very exciting sweater class. In this video, we're going to cover the pattern that we're going to make together and have just a little intro on reading a pattern. What kind of information are we going to find there? I'm going to interpret some things for you and just kind of generally get an overview on this pattern and some things that you're going to see on most patterns that you encounter. If you're following our classes from the very beginning, this will be the first one that we actually have a written pattern for that we will be following. So I have chosen the Flax pattern by Tin Can Knits. For a number of reasons, I've chosen this one. It's free, it's publicly available, it's very well written. I've made, I don't know, probably 10 of these at least, in different sizes for different people, for different reasons. And I just love it. It's well written. It comes in sizes from newborn all the way through adult 5 or 6X. I'm not sure. We'll see that in just a minute. And so you'll be able to find a size for almost anyone you're wanting to knit your sweater for. So you can see here, this is the front page. It has a woman wearing the sweater. You can see here along the sleeve, there's a little panel that is garter stitch. The one that I'll be making along with you will have this. If that feels a little too scary for you, you can absolutely omit it. I will kind of give you directions when we get there, but basically, to make this panel, you'll be knitting one row, purling one row, knitting one row, purling one row for just those few stitches on the sleeve. And if you don't want to do that, then you will just knit all the stitches. No big thing. It's got a crew neck. I think she's wearing a cropped version. There are two different choices for that. You can do a cropped version or kind of a longer version. We'll be talking a little bit in the class later about how to adjust lengths to fit you and your body. For me personally, I must have a little bit longer than average torso. So for almost all sweater patterns, I have to add 2 or 3 inches to the body to fit me, or else it's cropped, and I just personally don't like how they feel on my body and how they look on my body. So I do that. You may need it shorter, may need it longer than the pattern says. Same for sleeves. And the good thing about how this sweater is constructed, we start at the neckline and work down. One of the great things about that kind of sweater construction is that you can try it on as you go. And so that will save you time and angst later on if you're able to try it on as you go and make adjustments as you go. And I will talk you through how to do that. So that's just kind of an overview about why I chose this pattern. I will have a link to the pattern in the video description, so you can just go ahead and click through there. You don't have to give your email address. You don't have to join any kind of website. You don't have to pay for this. Totally free, and it's totally great. So here's kind of this is the first page of the written directions, and we're going to go over what you're going to find here. You're going to find this on any pattern that's worth its salt. So sizing, this shows the different sizes that are available on this pattern. You will notice, so here it's 0 to 6 month, and then there's a parentheses. As we work through the pattern, you're going to see directions written this way. So the first number you'll see in the pattern will be for the 6 month, then there will be a parentheses. 12 month, comma, 1 to 2 years, comma. So if you're reading the directions and there's a list of different, let's say, stitch counts, there will be maybe lists of different, knit for so many inches, and there's a list for how many inches it's going to be. That is the order showing up here, that's the order in which it's going to be written. And then you'll notice once we get to the adult sizes, it's bold. So in the pattern, when you see the bold, that's also how it's going to be written. And I'll show you a little bit later what I mean by that. So yarn, this is the yarn you need, worsted or Aran weight. And they say that their samples were made in these particular yarns, Derirum Natura Gillat. I'm going to mess that up, obviously. Sweet Georgia Superwash Worsted. So these are suggestions. You absolutely don't have to use those particular yarns. Others will be fine. What is important is gauge. You know I talk a lot about gauge. Gauge is how many stitches and how many rounds or rows are in a particular measurement, in this case 4 inches. The next video we'll talk a little bit more about gauge, how to get gauge. It's important that you have the right needles paired with the right yarn and get this many stitches and this many rounds in the 4 inches in order for your finished project to be the proper size. Suggested needles, they have US number 6 and US number 8. Again, that's kind of a starting point. You may need bigger or smaller needles to meet gauge. Then we have these for the smaller sizes, these are length of needles. This is a circular needle, so that's the one with the cords, and double pointed needles. I personally don't use double pointed needles. I use the magic loop method that we learned in our last project. I will be showing you a little bit of a refresher for how to do magic loop as we move through this pattern. If you prefer double pointed, that's totally fine. You will have to find a tutorial somewhere else to do that. I've never mastered them just because I've never needed to. If you're making these like bigger sizes, they recommend 16-inch and then also 24-inch circulars and double pointed needles. If you're going to use them larger sizes, you're going to need some longer cords. That's what these 24-32, that refers to the length of the cords for your circular needles. If you're doing magic loop for the sleeves, I would also recommend the 32-inch circular needles for the smaller sizes. That's what you're going to need to do the magic loop. Then yeah, that's what that little asterisk by the DPN double pointed needles was about. You may want to do magic loop as well. That's what we will be doing. Thank you very much. Notions will need a darning needle and stitch markers. And that is a lot of information on the first page. But it's important information we need to know so that we have the right supplies and we know whether or not this pattern is going to work for the size we're wanting to knit. Next page. So sizing notes, 2 body length options are given. C1 is regular length, C2 is cropped length. So when we come down to our chart down here, we have C1 and C2. You can see over here on our little diagram that C is from kind of the armpit down to the hem of the body. That's the body length, and they do have 2 lengths here for all of the sizes. And then the different models that they have throughout the pattern are wearing different sizes. What I do want to point out here is where it talks about, okay, Francine is wearing size ML, which is kind of between medium and large, cropped, so that's the shorter length, with 1 inch of positive ease. When they talk about ease, that is the difference between the garment measurement and your body measurement. So for sweaters, a lot of times they are going to have that 1 inch, meaning that the garment is 1 inch bigger than the body measurement. So a lot of times people like things to be a little bit oversized, a little bit kind of slouchy, or just not real tight. That is the 1 inch of positive ease. We see in the next sentence, Jordan is wearing the size large with 2 inches of positive ease. The more positive ease you have, the bigger the difference between the garment measurement and the body measurement, so that it's going to be just a little bit more roomy for you. And that's a preference thing. Some people like things kind of tight. And if that's the case, if you want something tight, you might do 1 inch, and that would be negative ease, to where the garment measurement is 1 inch smaller than the body measurement of the person. So sizing, it says the sizing table lists finished garment measurements. So choose a size based on your chest measurement and desired ease. So in this case, so for example, my body is about 40, my chest, we're looking at A, which is around the chest, around the body. My chest is about 43. So if I wanted about 3 inches of ease, I would be down here on this XL size to get 46 inches around the chest. Most sweater patterns, that's going to be the most important measurement, and that's the measurement you need to go off of. So if you're looking at this and you're like, oh, Callista, according to my chest size and a little bit more ease that I want, I'm going to do the XL. But over here, like B, the sleeve measurement is showing 13 or 21. What's B, C? Oh, they have for short 3/4 sleeve and long sleeve. So if I want a long sleeve, 21 inches, so my chest, I want the 46-inch chest sweater, but 21, that's way too long for my arms. Do I go down a size? No, because the arm length, the body length, this type of thing is a lot easier to adjust as you go than the chest measurement. The chest measurement is going to be more set and a lot more difficult to manipulate as we go through the sweater, making the sweater. So you would figure out the chest measurement of the person you're making the sweater for, and then come here and go down the A column to find the size that you need. And then the other thing, this is showing a bunch of different measurements, but the other thing I want to note here is yardage. So these last two columns, this C1 is for if you're doing cropped length, C2 is if you're doing the regular length sweater. This is how many yards of yarn you're going to need. I found this to be generous. I usually don't need quite as much as it's showing here, but your mileage will vary. This is a good place to start if you're buying yarn for your first project, or first sweater especially, to go ahead and go by these numbers when you're buying yarn. And then it has some variations down here if you're wanting to do 3/4 sleeves or short sleeves, how to make those adjustments in your yardage. Moving right along, you may or may not see this construction part in every sweater pattern. It is helpful though. This pattern is sweater pattern is written for beginners, which is great for where we are today. And so that's why you're seeing these diagrams. It's showing you the direction of knitting. It's showing you every step of the way, which is great. But most patterns will not have that. You'll have to read the directions. But this is great for showing you the general idea of how a sweater is knitted, and this pattern in particular. So this shows us that the sweaters work seamlessly in the round from the top down. So starting with the collar Cast on the neckline, and the yoke is shaped by raglan increases to the underarm, and then sleeves are placed on holds on waist yarn, and the body is completed, then the sleeves are worked last. So that gives us a general idea of how this works. I know that seems like a whole lot. Just think of this as the syllabus for your college class at the beginning that your professor hands you, and you're like, holy cow, that's a lot of work. But then you remember you have 15 weeks to complete it. We'll be there step by step. And then we start with the neckline. And this is where it's showing with smaller needles cast on 56. So this is where I was talking about a little bit earlier, where there are going to be places in the directions that refer to every size in a list. So this is how they get it to where a pattern is not 100 pages long, because they have separate directions for every size. They're able to give the directions, and then where the directions differ depending on the size, they'll list it out. So this 56 is for the smallest size. And then remember, when we got to the adult sizes, it started to be bold. That's where it starts here. That's going to happen several times throughout the pattern, because if we come down here, ribbing first, it's talking about how long we do the knit one, purl one, rib. And for the little tiny babies, we're going to do that for just 3/4 of an inch. For the bigger sizes and the adults, it's going to be 1.5 inches. So one kind of tip that I have found that helps me is I will analog print the pattern and go through the pattern before I start knitting, and take a highlighter, take a pen, circle the directions that are relevant to the size you're going to be knitting this time. And that saves time later and also cuts down on mistakes, because you're like, oh, am I knitting the 3rd size or the 4th size? And then I have to go back, and then it's just kind of more work later that you don't need to do. If you are really dedicated, I've done this too, and you're like, I'm gonna knit 5 sweaters in all these different sizes. I have put the printed pages in those plastic sheets protectors that go in 3-ring binders, and then taken a dry erase marker and circled the relevant directions for the size that I'm working in, so that later I can just wipe them clean and start over. But the important part here is to print it off, circle the directions that are going to be important to you, so that it's just make it easy on yourself later. Okay, moving through, we show how to do the neckline. What are these 3 pointy sticks? Those are double pointed needles. In this class, we're going to be doing magic loops, so we won't be doing that. So don't look at that and say, oh, that's scary. Then we're going to knit the yoke. That's the part that is on your chest, like kind of all the way down to the armpits. Moving on, short row shaping. Short rows is a way to make the back a little bit longer than the front, kind of up toward the neck and back, kind of or between your shoulder blades. This can make it fit better. We're not going to do it in this class because this is a beginner sweater class. So we will be opting out of that. But in later classes, I'll show you how to do that. We're going to put the sleeve stitches on a holder so that we can work them later before we go ahead and work the body. Then we're going to come back to the sleeve stitches that we put on hold and finish the sleeves. We see we have directions for different sleeve lengths if we want. And then finishing, we will weave in all the ends and block the sweater. The last thing I wanted to show you here that you'll find in most patterns is an abbreviation glossary, and it just writes out all the abbreviations that are used throughout the pattern. And it is important to read this even if you're pretty familiar with the abbreviations, just because sometimes designers decide they're going to do their own thing and not be conforming to what most pattern writers do, and so it is important to look at that. Or sometimes they make up their own abbreviations for their own stitches. Um, so that can be important too. And then it looks like we just have a few more pictures of people wearing different sizes. Oh, isn't he cute? Cute, cute. And then, oh, some other patterns by the same designer. So that is the basic introduction for reading a pattern and the pattern we are going to be using on this in this class. So we will be moving on to gauge and see you over there.